What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again. This time we got Frederik of Defecto. Thank you so much for your time today, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for allowing me to join.
Yep. It's awesome to have you here. So first off, before we talk about the album, you guys are actually on tour right now during the midst of this whole thing. What are we missing? Just tell me, what's it like touring right now in the middle of all this?
Well, actually, it's kind of a special tour. So all of our normal concerts have been, basically canceled for, ever since the whole thing started in March, so, February, March. So what we're doing right now is actually a tour of schools in Denmark. So it's not regular venues. Actually, we're just traveling around in Denmark and we're playing for kids in elementary schools.
That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really great. It's one of the few ways that we can really be active in this time. In these difficult times with the corona and everything. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and not to mention, it's never too early to get somebody into metal. So very, very good. You're doing great things right now in the course of this whole thing. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I mean, we really enjoy it. It's a great pleasure to play for these kids. Most of the reception that we get when we play for kids, even though they're quite young, some of them are as young as maybe 9 or 10 years old. They are all extremely they're a great audience. Basically, they are like, they don't have the inhibitions that a lot of older kids get. You know, they're much more immediate. They just respond without thinking about it, and it's a lot of fun to play for them.
Awesome. So you have the new album, Duality, officially out now. It came out last week, and the record's absolutely awesome. How was the overall making of this album, and now that it's out, the reception and everything been so far? Was like the intent to maybe make a direct continuation of Nemesis, or was this like a new beginning for Defecto in a way?
Oh boy, it was a bit interesting at times, actually. Mostly it was really good. Like you said, after we finished Nemesis, we actually pretty much started from scratch. With Nemesis and with Excluded, we had a lot of our material already written before we sort of even started thinking about the album. Whereas with Duality, we didn't have a single song, so we kind of had to start from scratch with it. Mm-hmm. So that took a little while. And then once we had all of the finished songs, then we went and we recorded drums with a legendary producer called Jakob Hansen here in Denmark. But after that, we were really unlucky because Niklas, our lead singer, he fell ill with I think it was a lung infection. And that meant that he couldn't sing. He couldn't put down the vocal tracks for like 6 months. And then once he got well, then we lost our studio. So then we couldn't go into the studio. And we had to wait another 6 months until our new studio, or rather Niklas's new studio, was built before we could start tracking vocals and tracking the final guitars, tracking the final bass tracks. So basically, I think the album could have maybe been out almost a year earlier if all of those things hadn't happened. So that part of it wasn't ideal. But on the other hand, it also meant that we had some more time to, perfect the songs and put the last finishing touches on the album.
Yeah, that led me perfectly into the next question, because I wanted to know, like, if what we're hearing on this album is how these songs were originally, like, written, or did these songs maybe change a lot over a span of time between 2017 and now?
I think, actually, the songs themselves, if we're talking about the kind of the songwriting itself, and the expression of the song, I think that is pretty much as it was on the demos that we made, actually. I would say that compared to Nemesis and Excluded, we didn't work as much with, changing up the songs as we may have done previously. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that we just have more experience as songwriters. So, the stuff that we write now is our more finished product, so to speak. But what we did spend a lot of time on was the mix of the album, and really making sure that we wanted every role on the album, every part that was being played, it had to have meaning. There had to be an idea behind everything put on there. So it was more the arrangement of the songs that we ended up putting a lot of time into.
Yeah, and that's very, very noticeable too. I feel like when I was listening to Duality, going into Rings of Saturn, to a track like Rise, to a track like Paradigm of Deceit, like it seemed like the craftsmanship. You seem to make every second count. I definitely say that Duality doesn't have a moment of filler in it.
That is absolutely a joy to hear. Thank you.
Yep. Was there maybe an overall preconceived idea when you first started the making of Duality, despite everything, happening in the course of making it? Was there maybe like a preconceived idea of how you wanted this album to sound, going right into it? Or was there maybe like a lot of experimentation involved?
I think every time we start working on an album, we always think that we have a plan. But then we start writing the music, and then we start working with the music, and then it kind of turns out that, making plans doesn't always mean that things will end up the way that you think, right? I think with Duality, a lot of what ended up being the theme, the theme of Duality and of these, or the plurality or whatever you want to call it, that came quite late in the process. It came after a longer period where we had been writing a lot of songs, and we kind of realized that a lot of our material came from two different, I don't know if you want to call it sources of inspiration or different kind of atmospheres or whatever it was. But we noticed that there was like a little bit of a split in the sound of the stuff that we wrote. And maybe, I don't know if you could say it surprised us, because, after all, we were writing it. But I don't think we had anticipated that we would have that kind of separation in the sound of the songs. But then we ended up sort of leaning into that and using that as the theme of the album. And instead of trying to, make everything fit the mold and make it to just be one kind of expression, then we sort of embraced it, and we thought, let's go with that as a theme. Let's work with the plurality and with the duality of these sounds that we made, and make a great album with that.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how things are always supposed to go one way and end up taking a completely different direction? I feel like that's the beauty of art.
Absolutely. That is just life in a nutshell.
Yep. Yeah, and you kind of have to let a song, I feel like, write itself as well, because if you kind of like dictate it too much or overshadow it too much, I think it can make something not as organic and almost even disingenuous. And
I think that's exactly what I mean by the thing that I said with the plans not really turning out to be what we were thinking. Because we try maybe to write something in a certain vein, but in the end, it is always the stuff that comes natural that ends up being the best. And we don't just write 11 songs and then we're done. Like for Duality, I think we wrote maybe 30 or 40 songs, and then we select the ones that we feel have the most, varied expression or has the best, whatever it is that makes the song stand out. We choose those, right? So that's the same thing here. We might have tried to write certain songs to fit something, but in the end, we just chose the best products that we had.
You ever worried that the song you left out of the album is going to be a B-side one day and just be the biggest hit you guys ever had?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of songs that we have been talking about making as B-sides or, releasing some demos or something. I think that could be a lot of fun for people to hear. And there's definitely also some songs that maybe it would have been a nice inclusion on the album, but there's also no reason to just fill up songs on the album, just because you have them, right? You rather make a product that, is good all the way around. And yeah.
Yeah, quality over quantity.
Absolutely.
Yep. Now, at what point though, like what, because I was wondering with the making of this album, I know artists really hate this question, like what's the meaning of the album name and stuff, and it's not really, but like did maybe the idea of duality sort of maybe come into as you started writing and making this album, because it almost seemed like that there was like the perfect bridge between it being very organic but also like being very focused. Did maybe the meaning of duality sort of come as in the course of making of this album?
I think absolutely exactly what you're saying right there. It came very naturally to us after we had been, discussing the themes of the album, discussing the songs of the album and listening to them together, and sort of, we had to select the songs that we thought were the best songs to put on the album. And from that point, it did kind of develop organically that we realized that there was this kind of duality within the album itself. You know, it had these really kind of technical songs that were super, like, not necessarily dark, but, you know, darker than a song like Washed Away, which is really the opposite, basically. It was very kind of, you know, a positive vibe, almost a happy kind of on the beach vibe or something like that, right? So these songs, to people from the outside, it might not seem logical to put two songs like Condemned and Washed Away on the same album. But to us, I think that's kind of one of our strengths, you know, that we do have more than just one side. And we like to show that, and we like to just play the music that we love to write. So, you know, yeah. That's why it all ultimately ended up on the same album.
Which I think is great. I think people like, I mean, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't too. If you make like a very consistent record, people say it's very repetitive. If you experiment too much, people are going to say it's inconsistent. So like, I think, so exactly. Yeah, I think in the end, the best thing any band could do, regardless of what genre, is just go with your gut instinct, right?
Exactly. Just do the natural thing. And exactly what you're describing is something that we see a lot in Denmark as well. I mean, we have what would you call it, magazines or something telling us that we're being, like we're doing too many strange things at the same time. And then we've got other magazines telling us that we should try new things. We should experiment more. You never know. You're never going to please everybody, right?
Yeah, and too many experimental things happening at once. They clearly never listened to Dillinger Escape Plan, so.
Well, I do, and I like them.
Yeah, so, awesome guys. Fun little fact, actually, their guitar player went to summer camp with the singer of Maroon 5.
I did not know that. Yep. That is very interesting, actually. That is very interesting, but he didn't become a member of Maroon 5. I bet he's... I
think it's sad about that. Well, we have Dillinger or had Dillinger Escape Plan. I think that's better, to be honest.
I would rather be a member of Dillinger Escape Plan.
Yeah. Well, I saw their final show ever in New York City, and that was the most violent thing I've ever seen in my life.
Really cool. I've never seen them, unfortunately.
Yeah, they're a band. They were a force to be reckoned with.
I've seen some videos, and absolutely, you're right. They're quite amazing.
Definitely. Now, when you look at the entirety of the Defecto catalog, going from your first EP to Excluded to Nemesis to Duality, like, do you almost look at all of these albums as like a self-portrait, like, or maybe like a representation of who you all are at a particular time?
I think, yeah, absolutely. I think the songs that we write are exactly what you say. They are a description of who we are at the time that we write them, right? And I think that's also one of the reasons why Duality is in many ways more up to date with who we are today. Because as I said previously, with Excluded and with Nemesis, a lot of the songs were actually written maybe 5 years or 3 years in advance of the album sort of becoming the project that we were working on. Whereas with Duality, it's very, very recent that these songs were written. So, it's very much what we were at the time when we wrote it, which is very recent. So a better representation of the stuff that we like to write now and the people that we are right now. So, yeah, I think a self-portrait is not a bad way to explain that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the end, it's coming from you. I mean, Henry Matisse, the painter, said that every piece of art is a self-portrait. So even if like none of your personal life is vested into the music, I still feel like it's a self-portrait because it's coming from your own mind and your own heart and your own hands.
Exactly. It's not like we have a choice. I mean, you are going to reveal who you are by the stuff that you write.
Yeah. Even if you portray a character on the album, like Marilyn Manson is still Marilyn Manson, Rob Zombie is still Rob Zombie. I feel like no matter how much of a character you portray in the music, it's still coming from you.
Exactly. And that's also why, even though we do all of these weird experiments, there's no denying that it is us. You're not in doubt when you hear the stuff, right? Because we can't run from who we are. Not that we're trying to anyway.
Yeah, and you know what? Like the music or not, it's still coming from you, and there's something to be said about that and respected.
Well, I appreciate that. Absolutely.
Yep. You ready for the most difficult question of the whole interview?
Bring it on.
How do you know when a song is done?
Ooh, that is a tough one. Absolutely. And I think I would say that it depends. Some songs can be done, like completely done in an afternoon. Some songs will take us a year to complete. Some songs that were supposed to be in the album are still not finished. I think there's always going to be a point when you feel it. If you feel that it's done, I mean, you are going to feel it at some point that there is nothing more to do with the song, that it is kind of the best representation of what it can be. And I think that ultimately that is what it comes down to. If you don't have that feeling, if you're not 100% sure that the song is as good as it could be, then you're probably still going to be working on it, right?
Yeah. I mean, what's funny is those, because I feel like your songs do capture a moment, and sometimes you're working on a song, as you said, for a couple weeks or a year. If you're Tool, 13 years. So I mean,
exactly. There you go. Or
oh my God, yeah, right.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, man, I'm waiting. Yeah.
But do you maybe find it harder? Maybe like the longer you're working on something, the harder it is to kind of like maintain that moment, or even maintain the inspiration that caused the writing process to begin with.
Exactly, absolutely. I feel that a lot. I mean, I mean, it's a big dilemma, especially if you're a person, if you don't have all the time you want to write a song. It can be horrible to start writing a song only to have to break and stop and go away from it for a couple of weeks. Because once you come back, it's a completely different situation. You might have to force it in a different way, and you have to kind of get back into the mindset that you were in when that song was written. So absolutely, I find that to be that can be a real challenge. And if you don't end up writing a full song in a day or at the time when you start writing it, I mean, that can be an issue when you want to finish the song later.
Yeah, because there's something to be said. Like, you obviously don't want to rush anything, and you have to take your time, and you have to approach the material with good precision and stuff. But at the same time, you also don't want to work on it for too long, and then it'll die in the process of making it. So it really is. It is like a damned if you do, damned if you don't moment.
It's about finding the balance between doing what comes natural and maybe your first instinct, and then also the stuff that sometimes it can be really good to really think about a section of a song and to really work on it for a long time, because maybe eventually you end up coming up with something better. I remember Rings of Saturn is a good example as a song that I had that exact issue with. I remember having the complete song for a very long time, but the chorus just didn't work. There was nothing in the chorus for a long time. So I think it took several months before I was walking, and then suddenly a melody came to me. But I had been trying everything, and ultimately it was just inspiration finally that made it kind of make sense. But I think that song is way better because of that I did wait on, and with putting something on it instead of just going with whatever idea I had at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's something to be said, and I envy artists who are able to do this to, if they're into the writing process, but then they need a break or something. I envy the ability for people to put stuff down and come back to it later. I don't know how some people are able to do that.
No, I can't do that either.
Yeah,
I am all in or not at all. I will take 2 months where I can only think about writing music, and then I will take 3 months where I don't think about it at all. I can't do the half and half thing.
Yeah, again, if you achieve that, that's an artistic accomplishment.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
It's worked.
It's worked for some people, and it's led to the demise of many others.
True.
And the final question I wanted to ask you is when it comes to playing your material live, do you try to maybe capture a similar energy into your live performance as people when they're listening to the album? Is there maybe a similar mind frame as that, or is playing live and songwriting almost two completely separate arts altogether?
That's a good question, actually. I feel like in some sense it's similar regarding the part about being natural in the process. I think that we do try to be as natural in anything we do, whether it is live or recording music. Do what feels good. And of course, we also think about our live shows, and we think about how we can make it interesting to watch. But ultimately, I think what we are doing is mostly just what comes natural to us. We're not trying to force a certain image or trying to, come across a specific way to the people. And I think that a lot of people, they feel that, they feel the energy coming off of us, and just the fact that we love playing together, and we love playing concerts. And I think that that's probably very infectious for the people. I hope, at least. I've never been kind of an audience to our own concerts, right? But I would say that it comes quite natural to us. And the productions that we do are mostly thinking about how can we put together a really nice set list that works well. How can we make some few visual things stand out for people so that it becomes, engaging for them to look at. But otherwise, it's just, we're having fun playing music.
Yeah, I feel like, do you almost have to like practice crowd interaction or practice like stage presence in a way, or does that just come as you do more and more and more of it each time?
I would say it's definitely an experience thing. I can tell you that now that we're playing these school concerts, I think I'm not sure about the exact count, but we've done something around like 80 or 90 of those concerts. And I'm telling you that if you've done 80 or 90 concerts in front of school children, where we're also speaking to them, we're telling them about us and about the music, and, we have things that go wrong on a daily basis. After stuff like that, we just know exactly what we're doing. We have so much experience doing that. So I think stage presence and interacting with the audience is very natural for us by now, because we've just done it so many times.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a thing that you have to work on. If you don't go out playing a lot, and it's really difficult, absolutely. And translating music from a CD to a live setting can be very, very difficult, because things don't always work out the same way.
Yeah, like songwriting is a different art. I know plenty of great performers, but they're only playing cover songs because they can't write their own songs. I know plenty of people who are great songwriters, but when you watch them play live, it's like you might as well watch paint dry. Like it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can mention a few.
Yeah. So it really just depends like on the type of music, the craftsmanship, and what you're willing to put into it. Again, performing, songwriting, and even like I know that there's plenty of producers and mixers who can't play a single note, but they're phenomenal at understanding arrangement and composition. So really there's just so many, just in a band, it's just there's so many different arts that it seems like you have to master.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And especially now these days where, bands basically have to run themselves, right? There are no companies, no record companies taking care of anything. So not only do you have to write the music and record the songs and play the songs live, you also have to be your own manager and do your own bookings and, be your own technician and everything. So it's absolutely true what you're saying.
Yep, definitely. Got to do it all yourself. And I do got to say this, though. Playing these school shows, have you started any mosh pits in the crowd, in the classrooms yet?
We wish. Well, right now, there's nothing at all because, the corona restrictions in Denmark means that we actually have to tell them that they can't even sing along, and they can't stand up, they can't dance, they can basically only sit on chairs and clap. That's it. So you can imagine us playing maybe we're playing in like a little theater or maybe just in the classroom, and then we are like playing on the floor level with the students, and they're sitting on chairs maybe 2 meters away from us, and each of them are sitting in a chair with like a meter in between them because of the corona restrictions. And then the only thing they can do is clap. And when we are, trying to interact with them, if they have to, if we want to ask them, are you ready for the next song? They have to clap. They can't say yes.
Oh, wow.
That would, yeah. So right now there are definitely no mosh pits. But when we used to play these concerts before all of the corona restrictions came down on us, I mean, we would definitely see a lot of students that did some funny things. Not necessarily mosh pit, but something similar.
You guys are like Jack Black in School of Rock right now.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Spot on. That is our life right now.
Yeah. Maybe they'll throw a couple chairs here and there and stuff. Like
we can only hope.
Yep. I mean, or you got to cover Alice Cooper's Schools Out at least one point.
That is a good point. Or Steve Vai's Bad Teacher, or whatever it is. There are some pretty cool songs. Maybe we should think about throwing those in there.
Or Van Halen, Hot for Teacher. I got to ask this.
There's a multiple one. Yeah.
How many times have you gone into the school and like the principal, like, have you had to lie in a way to get into playing the school? Be like, oh no, we're an acoustic folk band, but then you plug in and then just throw in some blast beats and just go all out and be like, oh God, what have we done?
We have had a couple of scenarios where the people that came to meet us, to greet us in the morning, definitely did not know what they were getting into. I mean, usually the school, they will book us in advance and they know us because they've listened to us or they've seen us, in terms of like in other associations with these school tours. But we have had a couple of times with some, how would you call it, like some elderly teachers coming out to greet us, and they were just, absolutely not prepared for listening to a heavy metal concerts. And we get, the weirdest questions like, do you play your own music, or do you, what else? Absolutely funny questions because they have no idea what it is, right?
Yep.
But we haven't had any kind of, we haven't been thrown out from a school yet, but we're working on it.
Okay, you got to continue this tour. Maybe bring Watain out with you.
Maybe that's it. Yeah, that's a good point.
Or have Dillinger.
I'm sure that would do the job.
Or have Dillinger Escape Plan reunite, and then have them do that tour with you. That'll make for some interesting results.
That would definitely be interesting. Yeah, I'm up for that. If you can get them together again, I'm up for that for sure.
I'll give Ben a call as soon as I hang up. Before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote, like maybe some live stream performances so we can watch you here in America, or anything else with Duality that you would like to promote?
Let me think. We've got a couple of live recordings coming out at some point. We're with a classical orchestra that we played with in Denmark here a while ago, but that's going to be a while. Otherwise, I don't really think we have anything regarding Duality, but I would say to any fans out there, if you want to support your artists, because obviously these are difficult times for all artists that are affected by Corona. I mean, if you want to go and give them a few extra streams on Spotify, or if you want to go up and buy a t-shirt or whatever it is, I mean, it's greatly appreciated by the artists. So I think that's what I have to say about that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Frederik of Defecto. Duality out now. Pick it up while supplies last forever. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.